we're driving deep today into the heart of Manipur, India.
Okay.
It's a place that's been grappling with this conflict for years now.
Right.
And we're going to go beyond the headlines, and the statistics that we always hear.
Yeah.
To uncover the human cost of this conflict, the stories that are often lost, in the noise.
Absolutely.
And you've got these two powerful pieces here. A personal letter that's just filled with raw emotion.
Yeah.
And then a report that just lays bare the stark reality on the ground.
Yeah.
And our mission today is to understand why this matters.
Yeah.
Not just for Manipur, but for all of us, and to explore what true healing and justice might look like in a place where so much has been broken.
Yeah, what immediately struck me was how the author wrestles with the very act of writing about this.
Yeah.
They talk about the burden of profiting from others' suffering,
Right.
knowing that silence equals complicity.
Wow.
It's a tension that many who bear witness to tragedy grapple with.
It's a powerful reminder that we're dealing with real lives here, It's
Yeah.
not just some abstract conflict.
Absolutely.
And the report just paints this grim picture. 223 lives, lost over 200 villages. Just reduced to ash, more than 7,000 homes destroyed.
It's devastating.
Even places of solace and peace, over 360 churches and synagogues haven't been spared. It's overwhelming. And honestly, it's like those numbers just risk becoming that.
Numbers. And the author really pushes back against that numbness.
Yeah.
They say the 223 deaths are fathers, mothers, children.
Wow.
Forcing us to confront the individual faces behind these statistics.
Yeah.
Imagine, if you will, just a bustling marketplace,
Right.
suddenly engulfed in flames.
Oh, my
A
God.
family separated in the chaos.
Oh.
A child's laughter silenced forever.
Oh, my God.
These are the stories we need to remember.
It's heartbreaking. And then there's the destruction of these places of worship.
Right.
It's not just physical damage. It strikes at the core of a community's identity.
Exactly. To understand the depth of this loss, you have to understand the role of these spaces.
Right.
For example, in Manipur, many indigenous communities gather in their churches to practice Lai Haroba, a traditional ritual dance that celebrates their connection to nature and their ancestors. And these rituals are more than just performances,
Yeah.
They're living embodiments of their cultural heritage passed down through generations.
Right.
So the destruction of these spaces isn't just about bricks and mortar.
Yeah.
It's about the potential loss of centuries-old traditions.
Oh, wow.
The very fabric of their society.
And then there's the silence.
Yeah.
The author's anger at the central government's inaction for 21 months is palpable. They question how anyone can simply move on, be happy,
Right.
while this tragedy unfolds.
The author's plea for remembrance is even more poignant when we consider the deafening silence from those in power.
Yeah.
Throughout history, we've seen this pattern repeat itself. When those with authority fail to acknowledge suffering,
Right.
it allows atrocities to continue unchecked. It raises those crucial questions about accountability. Who is responsible for ensuring justice?
Right.
What systems failed to protect these communities?
While remembering is vital, some might say that dwelling on the past can hinder reconciliation.
Right.
So how do we balance honoring the victims with the need to move forward?
That's a valid point, and it's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
Remembering isn't about clinging to anger or resentment.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging the truth of what happened, learning from it, and using that knowledge to pave a path toward a future where such tragedies are less likely to occur.
Okay. I'm starting to see the nuances here.
Yeah,
Remembering it as a foundation, but not the entire structure.
exactly.
So let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
Could you give us a quick overview of the conflict itself?
Sure.
Who are the key players and what are the root causes of this violence?
Okay, so it's a complex situation
Yeah.
with a long and tangled history.
Right.
But at its core, the conflict in Manipur is fueled by ethnic tensions,
Okay.
land disputes, and a struggle for autonomy and recognition.
Got it.
You have various ethnic groups,
Yeah.
the Meitei,
Okay.
the Naga,
Mm-hmm.
the Kuki, each with their own unique culture, language, and claims to the land.
And these tensions have been exacerbated by economic disparities
Exactly.
and political maneuvering.
Right.
And I'm trying to get a sense of how these factors combine to create such a volatile situation.
For instance, the Meitei, who are the majority group in the valley,
Right.
they've historically held more political and economic power.
Okay.
Some of the other groups feel marginalized and excluded from development opportunities,
Yeah.
which fuels resentment and distrust.
The report mentions something called the Armed Forces Special Powers Act.
Ah, yes.
It sounds pretty intense.
Right.
How does that play into all of this?
That's a key piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
The AFSPA, it grants the Indian military broad powers to operate in designated areas,
Right.
including Manipur.
Okay.
And while it's intended to combat insurgency, human rights groups argue that it's often misused, leading to abuses against civilians and further inflaming tensions.
That's awful.
Imagine living under constant military presence.
Yeah.
With limited freedoms.
Right.
And the ever-present fear of being caught in the crossfire.
Oh, gosh.
It's a breeding ground for more violence.
So it sounds like a vicious cycle.
It is.
So given this complex backdrop,
Right.
what does justice even look like?
Right.
The author calls for 2025 to be a year of reckoning.
Mm-hmm.
But what are some concrete steps towards achieving both accountability and healing?
Well, it's clear that a purely punitive approach won't be enough.
Okay.
We need to address both the symptoms and the root causes of the conflict.
Yeah.
Accountability is essential.
Right.
But it has to go beyond simply punishing perpetrators.
Okay.
It means acknowledging the systemic failures that allowed the violence to occur in the first place.
So instead of just focusing on individual acts of violence, we need to look at the broader structures
Exactly.
that enabled this conflict to fester.
That might involve investigations into human rights abuses, truth and reconciliation commissions, where victims can share their stories and perpetrators can be held accountable.
Okay.
And perhaps even reparations to those who've suffered loss.
It's a lot to unpack, but it seems like the concept of restorative justice is key here.
It is.
Can you give us an example of how that's worked
Sure.
in other conflict situations?
One compelling example is the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa.
Right.
After the end of apartheid. It wasn't about revenge or punishment,
Okay.
but about creating a space for victims to speak their truth,
Right.
for perpetrators to acknowledge their wrongdoing, and for the nation to begin a process of healing and rebuilding.
So in the context of Manipur, restorative justice might involve bringing together representatives from different ethnic groups
Precisely.
to engage in dialogue facilitated by neutral mediators.
It's about finding ways to repair the broken relationships.
Yeah.
Build trust and create a shared vision for the future.
It sounds incredibly challenging.
Yeah, it is.
But I suppose even the smallest steps toward reconciliation can have a ripple effect.
They can.
Speaking of small steps, what can we as listeners do to contribute?
Right.
It's easy to feel powerless in the face of such immense suffering.
That feeling of helplessness is understandable.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that even small acts of solidarity can make a difference.
Okay. Yeah. I'm all ears.
Okay.
Give us some tangible actions we can take.
Well, first and foremost, we can educate ourselves.
Okay.
Dig deeper into the history and complexities of the conflict beyond the headlines. Yeah. There are documentaries, articles, books written by Manipuri authors that offer nuanced perspectives and firsthand accounts.
Learning more is a great first step, but what about more direct action?
There are organizations working on the ground in Manipur.
Okay.
Providing humanitarian aid.
Right.
Advocating for peace.
Yeah.
Documenting human rights violations.
Okay.
You can research these organizations and find ways to support their work.
Right.
Whether it's through donations, volunteering, or simply spreading the word about their efforts.
You know, it makes me think about a time when I was in college.
Okay.
There was this protest happening on campus about a social injustice issue.
Right.
And I was hesitant to join at first.
Yeah.
Felt like my voice wouldn't matter.
I understand.
But then I realized that silence was a form of complicity.
Yeah.
And even just standing in solidarity with others could send a powerful message.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play.
We do.
However small it might seem.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it ties back to the author's plea to break the silence.
He does.
Even simply sharing information about the conflict with your friends and family.
Right?
Engaging in thoughtful discussions. Challenging misconceptions.
Yeah.
Those are all forms of action.
It's like planting seeds of awareness.
It is.
And who knows, those seeds might sprout into something bigger. Something that contributes to positive change.
Exactly. And remember, action doesn't always have to be grand or heroic.
Okay.
Sometimes the most powerful actions are the ones taken consistently, quietly, and with unwavering commitment.
So we've talked about understanding the conflict, supporting organizations working on the ground, and raising awareness in our own circles.
Right.
What else can we do to amplify the voices of the Manipuri people?
Okay.
And advocate for lasting peace? We often hear about writing to our representatives.
Yeah.
But does that really make a difference? you know,
Absolutely
and a
count.
situation as complex as this.
Remember, governments respond to pressure,
Right.
both internal and external.
Okay.
By contacting your elected officials, you're adding your voice to a chorus, calling for attention and action on Manipur.
Got it.
You can urge them to support policies that promote peace and reconciliation, to increase humanitarian aid, and to hold those responsible for human rights violations accountable.
So it's about making sure that Manipur isn't just, a blip on the radar, that it stays on the agenda.
Precisely, and don't underestimate the power of collective action.
Okay.
When citizens come together and demand change,
Right.
it can shift the political landscape.
It's like that old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yeah.
But beyond contacting officials, are there ways to engage with the international community on this issue?
Yes, absolutely. Raising awareness internationally is crucial.
Okay.
You can share information about the conflict on social media, right, to international human rights organizations, and support initiatives that promote dialogue and understanding between different cultures and communities.
It strikes me that this goes beyond just Manipur.
It does.
It's about fostering a global culture of empathy and solidarity.
You're right. It's about recognizing our shared humanity, understanding that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to circle back to where we started.
Okay.
The author's plea for 2025 to be a year of reckoning. It's a powerful call to action. And I think we've explored some concrete steps we can take
We
to
have.
make that a reality.
Well, the situation in Manipur is incredibly complex.
Yeah.
And the road to healing is long. It's crucial to remember that hope exists.
Right.
The resilience of the Manipuri people, their determination to rebuild their lives and communities. That's a powerful testament to the human spirit.
And that spirit deserves to be met with our support,
Absolutely.
our empathy, and our unwavering commitment to justice.
Well said.
So, listener, we leave you with this. The tragedy in Manipur is a stark reminder that peace is a fragile thing.
It is.
Something we must actively work towards,
Right.
not just in distant lands, but in our own communities as well.
Yeah.
What will you do to ensure that the stories of Manipur are not forgotten? How will you turn awareness into action, apathy into empathy, and despair into hope?
Good question.
The answer, as always, lies within you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.